It's time for Recipe of the Day. Chicken fried chicken, sometimes called country fried chicken, started in Texas with probably German or Austrian immigrants who loved their schnitzel. You know, that meat that's pounded thin and then breaded and fried to get crispy. I also told you about chicken Milanese recently, which is like an Italian version of that same dish, right? Well, when German and Austrian immigrants came to Texas in the 19th century, they brought this with them, but they were doing beef. And so that's how we ended up with chicken fried steak. And then chicken fried chicken became the same thing, but made it a chicken. And I think the distinction and why it's called that is because there was already fried chicken, which usually used the bone-in chicken pieces with the skin on, whereas this was more like a steak-like portion, a cutlet, right? And so that's how chicken fried chicken is different from fried chicken. And what it's mirrored on is that chicken fried steak, which is mirrored on the schnitzel that the German immigrants brought to Texas. It's very clear, though, if you've made chicken fried chicken, that it is quite different these days from the schnitzel or the Milanese. For one thing, it tends to be marinated in buttermilk, more like our southern fried chicken recipes, right? Marinated in buttermilk. And then the seasonings are like reminiscent of Cajun and Creole kinds of spices. You get, well, salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, sometimes paprika, sometimes oregano, sometimes cayenne. So you get those blends of seasonings in there. And then quite often chicken fried chicken, and this is true of the recipe that I'm telling you about today, uses just flour as the breading or dredging, so not breadcrumbs. And that's different from a lot of schnitzel recipes, which often use breadcrumbs, but not always. You just need that coating, right? Finally, chicken fried chicken is classically served with that peppery country gravy. So we are going to do all that. I've tried my best to simplify this recipe, and one of the ways that I did that was to make a seasoning blend at the beginning, a mixture of all the spices that you're going to be using, and you divide it in 3 and then use it 3 times. So you're not like measuring your salt, your pepper, your garlic over and over and over again. You know what I mean? So that is done. Yeah, and so let's dive into this recipe. So you're going to start making that seasoning blend. You're mixing together in a small bowl 3 teaspoons of salt, 3 teaspoons of pepper, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, a teaspoon of oregano, a teaspoon of paprika, and a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. That ends up being just over 3 tablespoons, and we're going to need it 3 times. So you can either divide it into 3 equal seeming portions or just each time scoop out about a tablespoon. And either way, that's going to be fine. Okay. Then you're going to get a medium-sized bowl and you're going to whisk an egg into there and add a cup of buttermilk and 1/3 of that seasoning blend. Mix that up, and then you're adding 4 chicken breast cutlets to that mixture, flipping them in there to coat them. Now, if you want, you can buy those chicken breast cutlets already in cutlets. Tends to be more expensive, but is definitely more convenient. Or you can make your own by using 2 chicken breasts. You're going to put one in front of you on the cutting board, and then holding your knife parallel to the cutting board, you're slicing horizontally through it to make 2 flat portions. And then if they are more than a 1/4 inch thick, you're going to want to pound them flatter. I like to put them between 2 pieces of plastic wrap and then use a flat meat mallet or a rolling pin to pound them down to about a 1/4 of an inch. The other thing that you can do, and you know this is my favorite, is to use boneless, skinless chicken thighs instead of the chicken breast. It's so much juicier. To do that, though, you also do need to pound those a little bit. So you're going to get out your boneless, skinless chicken thighs, unroll them because they're in those little bundles tucked around where the bone used to be. Usually, sometimes when you buy them frozen, they're already unrolled and flat. So unroll them if you need to, put them between the plastic wrap, like for the chicken breast cutlets, and then pound the thickest parts down to 1/4 of an inch. Well, you want the whole thing to be 1/4 of an inch, but quite often parts of the chicken thigh are already that thin. So you're just trying to get them even, right? Okay. Now you transfer your chicken to the buttermilk mixture and flip it in there to coat it well. And then that goes into the fridge. I'm going to say that you can do this in a plastic bag. So you could have just whisked up your egg in a little bowl, put it into a zip top bag with the buttermilk and the seasoning, mix that up, and then add the chicken to there, seal it up, put it in the fridge. You can do that, or you can do this bowl. They tend to be like submerged better in the plastic bag, but it's like an extra step. So I don't usually bother. I just use a bowl that is like narrow enough that I know my chicken's going to all be pretty well coated in that mixture. Now it's going into the fridge for ideally 4 hours, but if you don't have as much time, 30 minutes is fine, and you can go as much as 8 hours. Now, if they're in that bag, halfway through, give it a little squish around, flip it over. If they're in the bowl, halfway through, just go and kind of toss them around just so that they're more evenly coated. One's poking up out of the top. You want that one to get down into the bottom. And that's because the buttermilk is actually tenderizing the chicken. It has that acidity, so it's working like a marinade, right? And we also have salt in there. So we're, doing a little bit of brining. Of course we are. This is me. You know me. I'm always brining stuff. So that is like doing something to the chicken, and you want it to be as even as you can. And like I said, if you only have 30 minutes, just do 30 minutes. I've done these experiments on brining chicken, and 30 minutes does make a difference. I will say, it doesn't actually say this in the recipe. If you're only doing 30 minutes, you don't have to put them back into the fridge. They're safe on the counter for up to an hour, really. So, your buttermilk is cold, the chicken's cold, you're putting that in a bowl mixed together, and then just leave it on the counter for 30 to 45 minutes. You're fine. Now I've said that, I feel like I want to give you a safety caveat. That is if you're going to cook the chicken immediately. The bacteria takes a while to start growing, and so you are still in a safe amount of time. At an hour, no problem. But then you do want to cook it. You wouldn't want to then put it in the freezer or then put it in the fridge and cook it the next day, right? If you think that there's a chance that is going to happen, just put it in the fridge right from the beginning. Okay, when you are getting ready to cook that chicken, you can take it out of the fridge, and then in a shallow bowl, you're combining a cup of flour with 1 teaspoon of baking powder and another scoop of that seasoning blend, 1/3 of your seasoning blend, which is, of course, again, just a little bit over a tablespoon. Mix that up, and then take a piece of chicken from that marinade bowl, give it a little shake to shake off some excess marinade, and then put it in the flour mixture, flipping it to coat. Transfer it to a plate. Repeat with all 4 of your portions. Now you're going to get everything ready, because what we're going to do is we're going to fry the chicken. Then we're going to keep it warm while we make the gravy. So make sure all of your gravy ingredients are handy. You're going to want to have some chicken stock and some heavy cream and that last bit of the seasoning blend. And you're going to want to preheat the oven to 250 degrees Fahrenheit, and then put a wire rack over a baking sheet. We're going to transfer the chicken to there to go into the warm oven to stay warm. And using the rack just helps the air circulate under the chicken so it doesn't get soggy where it's in touch with the baking sheet. If you don't have a wire rack, you can just put it straight on the baking sheet. That's going to be just fine. Then also put about 4 pieces of paper towel on a plate. When we take the chicken out of the oil, we're going to want to blot it on the paper towel to remove the excess oil before it goes into the oven. So you get all of that ready. You have your gravy ingredients ready. Your oven is preheated on warm, some paper towel on a plate, and a wire rack over a baking sheet. We're ready to go. You want to use a large skillet that's going to be big enough to hold all 4 of your chicken pieces with a bit of space around them. If your skillet is not big enough, you can do this in batches, 2 at a time. When 2 are done cooking, they're going to go into that warm oven. We'll blot them first and then put them on the rack into the warm oven to stay warm while you do the other 2, and then the other 2 will join them in the oven while you make the gravy. So if your skillet's not big enough, that's fine. And to your skillet, you're adding about 1/2 inch of oil. You want something with a high smoking point, so like a vegetable oil or a peanut oil. And you are heating that oil over medium-high heat until it's very hot. You want it to be at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you have a candy thermometer or something that you can use to monitor the temperature of the oil, not of the skillet, of the oil, then you want it at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. When When it's nice and hot, you're adding your chicken to the skillet in a single layer and you're cooking it until it's golden brown on the bottom. It's going to be about 3 to 4 minutes. Then use some nice long tongs so you're far away from that oil and flip the chicken over and cook until the other side is nice and brown, 2 or 3 minutes more. Now, because we pounded that chicken thin, we know that by the time this crust is brown, the chicken is cooked all the way through. If we'd kept it thicker, we might not know for sure. It's still a good idea to cut into one and make sure it's not pink inside. Okay, then you are transferring that chicken to your paper towel lined plate, from there onto the rack on the baking sheet, and then that rack baking sheet chicken combo is going into your 250-degree Fahrenheit oven to stay warm while you make your gravy. Now, for the gravy, if you want extra richness and deliciousness, discard all of the oil from the skillet and add 4 tablespoons of butter. If, however, you want to do this sort of traditionally, it is very traditional to use the oil that you fried the chicken in to make the gravy. So if you're doing that, you also want 4 tablespoons of the oil. That's 1/4 cup. Discard the rest of the oil from the skillet and just keep the 1/4 cup in there. And you have this over medium-low heat. You're adding in 1/4 cup of flour and that last portion of your spice mixture. Cook that while stirring over medium-low heat until the flour is just starting to brown. It's just going to take a couple minutes. Then, while you're stirring continuously, you are adding in 2 cups of low-sodium chicken stock. I'm saying low-sodium because we put quite a bit of salt in this recipe already, and we don't want to add more salt at this point. So slowly add in your 2 cups of chicken stock, and then follow that up with 1/2 cup of heavy cream. Nice and rich. Then you're going to just keep stirring that as it comes up to a simmer and is bubbling. And then you can let it simmer for a moment or two. It'll thicken a little bit more and you are done. You get that chicken out of the oven, top it with the gravy and get ready for such a comfort food feast. Oh, I'm envious of you. I think I might have to go make this right now myself. Okay, I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date. So it's helpful to know that today is March 18th of 2025. You can also get the link to the recipe in our Facebook group. I post the recipe of the day link there every single day, 7 days a week. I'm always there to inspire you with something that you can make that day that will be delicious and perfect. That Facebook group is facebook.com/groups/recipeotd. I look forward to seeing you there. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all-new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.